Good evening. My name is Ray Dwyer, and I am your host tonight. This is Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation and book discussion group, and tonight we're discussing Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Chapter 7, The Gap. What is the gap? The gap is the difference between how we feel about ourselves in our heart and how we present ourselves to the world. We'll go into that a little bit more detail, and we'll go into why getting those two coherent is really important to adding to our health and our welfare. I laughed at that statement a moment ago because just the story of getting ourselves together just seems like something we do all our life. Just get your stuff together, will you? Here I am, an old man, and I'm still talking about getting my stuff together. I'm being careful on how I say it. You guys know what usually said. Yeah. The chapter starts out kind of interesting, I think. Dr. Joe is talking about a time in his early days after he produced the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? And he's produced one book already called the Evolve Your Brain. For anyone that's a kind of a tech head and you want a challenge to read, this is actually Dr. Joe's first book. There is not one meditation in it. This is a science book that describes all the science of what he talks about in the rest of his time teaching. I'm a reader. I've got pretty good college understanding underneath me. I've read many books of self-help, psychology, and science. And I will tell you, that was one of the slowest reads I have had in a long time. I would have to read a couple pages and I'd go, what did he say? And read it again and again to get even the basics of it in me. But by the time I was done reading that, I was ready to go at this book a second time. It's quite a read. But that's just all the principles that he uses. That's the science foundation that he uses for everything. But he starts this chapter in kind of a low point of his life, he was saying, where he finds himself being very dependent for his satisfaction and happiness on what's going around him. I mean, get this, he's a young chiropractor, and all of a sudden he is a star on stage and everybody's loving him, and he's getting pumped up everywhere he goes, and he's making probably more money than he's ever made in his life. And he realizes one day he is not feeling what he's teaching. And all of a sudden his words get into him. And he has to go, halt this train. I got to learn to be what I'm saying. His core integrity just made him stop and think about his life. And so this chapter is about a little bit of self-discovery that he went through. Page 148. I'll be reading certain paragraphs. I try to read the chapters and summarize them, but every now and then I come across the chapter where there's just no playing with the paragraph. You just got to read it. On the day I recognized the core reason for my unhappiness, I also realized that I needed the external world to remember who I was. My identity had become the people I talked to, the cities I visited, the things I did while I was traveling, and the experiences I needed in order to reaffirm myself as a person called Dr. Joe. I can so relate to that. I was Mr. Veteran. I was Mr. Tough Guy. I was Mr. Tech Head. I was Mr. Everything outside there. Everything that I thought I was, none of it had something to do with inside me. It was all, I measured myself by this and this and this history in that place and this history in that place. I've heard this one. I had to laugh like, yeah, I don't know if there's anybody here that wouldn't say, yeah, I got a lot of that in me too. In fact, I saw that all of my perceived happiness was really just a reaction to stimuli in the external world that made me feel certain ways. I then understood that I was totally addicted to my environment, and I was dependent on external cues to reinforce my emotional addiction. What a moment for me. I had heard millions of times that happiness comes from within, but it never hit me like this. So here he is, a very successful person, and he finally reached a point where he says, wait a minute, I'm doing something wrong, because everything that makes me satisfied and happiness is dependent on out there, and me reacting to it out there. Remember, we were talking a minute ago about our past and us reacting to our past. That's out there. Kind of an interesting view. Kind of makes him human, don't it? Over on page 149, there's a picture of two hands on an identity gap. The lower hand is who we really are. The upper hand is how we appear to be. Amanda, I see your hands up. How you doing?
Hi, Ray. Thank you so much. I just thought if it's the right time, I could share a little story of something that I experienced some years ago about how our environment conditions us to a certain identity, and when that identity is ripped away, it's an utterly overwhelming experience to try and figure out who we are, or how we, the frame of reference that we put on anything around us.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes. See,
yeah.
from a military history, my mind just screams yes at that. Because who here has not heard of the struggle of veterans get out of the military and can't figure out how to live as a civilian? I mean, that's an extreme case, I admit it, but man, that just nails the veteran story. But that story, that also goes for a married couple. You get two people who's been married for 10, 20 years and they get a divorce. They have to relearn life.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and there's many different examples of that. Okay,
Yeah.
Amanda, so let's see what it's got.
Might sound a little out there, but it's the thoroughly sober story. I was at a not public place, but it wasn't a home. It was a kind of a religious environment. It was actually a temple, a Hindu temple, and I was about to sit down and have lunch with everybody. And as I sat down, I accidentally leaned my back against something, which turned out to be a fire extinguisher that was very poorly lodged on just a single nail in the wall. There was no hook on it holding it up. So as I leaned myself back, I was going to be sitting on the floor. The fire extinguisher came crashing down with the sharp metal edge against my Achilles. So it was an excruciatingly painful experience. And I thought, oh, I've done some real damage, but the pain was intense. I looked around and I just saw the back of my heel gashed right open, and I could see my Achilles tendon sort of through the whole gash. And so something about the whole experience, seeing my body, seeing everything like that, it put me into a state of shock. I don't know if it was partly on an actual physical level, that there were some circuits that got cut through that experience, or if it was just the shock that did it. But I had some decades of mantra meditation practice at that point, and I could feel that I was going to go way out immediately. So I grabbed, my mantra meditation beads as I was just passing out, and I grabbed it, and I was out for some time. And then when I came around, this was where the experience was so shocking, because I was looking at these people around me. I had absolutely zero frame of reference to know, I mean, whether they were amoeba, whether they were, I didn't even know, not learn who they were. I didn't know what they were. It was somehow I had lost all sense of the, the name, the connection of what I would have normally associated from my life of conditioning to say who or what these were. And they were looking at me, and because I still had this mantra meditation that I'd held in my mind as I went out, when I came back, that's all I kind of had. I think just the conditioning of saying it was still on my lips. And then I just kept on that mantra meditation, saying it, and gradually, all the things, objects, I didn't even know they were objects, whatever it was around me sort of came back into view. And I started to realize again, all the sort of the memory flooded back into my consciousness. And I realized again what I was, who I was, that these were people. Anyway, this experience it happened 3 times. Each time I went out and I came back, and again, the same thing happened. I didn't know, but somehow each time when I came back, there was just a memory of how I'd got back to a sense of self.
Right.
And so that memory became what actually pulled me back into the present, really, of my present, I could say, conditioned environment. But it was that very experience of as close to what I could imagine death is like, when everything that is familiar is completely wrenched away from one.
Right.
And one has no frame of reference, because all those things that one identifies with, thinks one is, the objects, people, things that one's built a conditioned sense of reality around, suddenly no longer have bearing because one's leaving. So it was a very profound, and actually I mean, an experience that it still informs who I am. So just thought I'd share that in yeah, for where we are in this chapter.
Yeah, that gives you a reference in your life that is just precious. Just it's
Mhm.
hard to, like you said, you're stretching, trying to find words to describe it. It's so unique.
Yeah, yeah,
That's pretty good.
exactly. But a good reminder that
Hmm.
those things cannot really inform the self.
Right.
Ultimately, they can be transformative, but they cannot fully inform the self because they shift. They
There you go.
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They shift
yeah,
according to our ability to be aware of ourself.
right, right.
And
Yeah.
and as time goes by, I know as much work as I do, my ability to know who I am evolves. And I have days when I'm kind of a wake up in the mud, and other days I'm lit and just like I'm walking with angels, it seems like, just so life is not a straight line. It's and so you just go with after you quit trying to be perfect at this, you just kind of go with it and love it and just go for the ride and do the best you
Mm,
can.
that's
You
so
know,
nice. Yeah, that's really nice.
yeah, because
Oh,
being the guy I was, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to keep it right. Didn't take me long to learn that that doesn't work too well. Just it just doesn't happen no matter how hard you try, because life isn't that way. Life is like the waves on like the beach, it's always changing, always moving, always tides, coming and going. So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
mm,
Let's go back to the chapter, because that's really not too off. Because on page 149, there's a hand above and a hand below. The hand below is defined as who we really are. The hand above is how we appear to be. You know, um, who we really are is how I feel, how I really am, how I am in the inside, my ideal for myself. And that's a different definition depending on how well you've defined yourself and discovered who you really are. Uh, the day before I had my discovery of my worthiness, I would have a very different definition of who I am than the day after I had that meditation, when I discovered surrender and worthiness. Those 2 days are radically different. But what's funny about it is that how I allow myself to appear to people out here is really kind of saying, in the outside world, they don't know this about me. I don't talk to people about this. I go play bridge in a group of people and they don't hear this part of my story at all. I don't mention it. They just, because the world doesn't know what we do. And just think about how hard it is just to explain it in this group. I don't stand a chance of explaining it to someone who has no reference to this. So I don't. So how we appear to be is your professional, your social appearance, just how you get along in the world. Yeah. If we sit long enough without doing anything, we learn to begin to feel something, and that something is how we really are. Kind of like what she said with her previous meditation, where she went in and she went away. Well, she was kind of motivated by a pretty severe pain, and she wanted to back out of that pain, and she went away, and she kind of discovered who she really was. This is just the vessel that we express our lives in. Layer by layer, we wear various emotions, which form our identity in order to remember who we think we are. We have to recreate the same experience to reaffirm our personality and corresponding emotions. My favorite part of that expression on the top of page 151 is this facade that we're sharing is who we think we are and want to be expressed as. Kind of interesting expression. In order to remind us of how we want to project ourselves to the world. To the skill level that I have, I am projecting who I think I would like to be to the best of my skill level to do it. I still have a future self up here that I'm working toward that I really like to be there someday, and I'm working on it. And every day you see the people I talk to see hints of me taking another progress in that change. But so we're all getting there. But part of this part of the chapter is for the purpose of becoming self-aware. If we are hiding ourselves from our own consciousness, then we're finding it rather difficult to change because we don't know what it is that we're changing. It's just this boogeyman that comes up. Now go away, go away. Okay. That is the nobody. That is the person whom we doubt others will like and accept. It's like, I can tell you that the people I'm learning how to play bridge. And it's probably the most complicated card game I've ever come across, which is why I like to play it. It's pretty complex. Well, anyway, that society, there's no place to talk about this, I can tell you. So I don't let them see this about me. As we mentally review the experiences reported in our mind, the body begins to relive the event over and over just by thought alone. We kept the refractory period of emotional running for so long that we journeyed from a mere emotional reaction, to a mood. Oh, he's just in one of those moods. To a temperament. Oh, he's been that way he's just got a temperament about that. And ultimately to a personality trait. And a personality trait is part of how you express yourself pretty well in a fixed state. And that shapes your personal reality. You start backing that up. And if that first refractory period ultimately shapes your personal reality, the world about you, guess what? You have the power to change that simply by resolving the conclusions and the ties you made in that refractory period. You have this memory of an emotion and you cooked it in your head. long enough that it shaped you in a personality trait, and that trait is reflected in your reality. You change how you react in your mind to that event, even though that event is years ago, and it will grow in you, and you will change your personality trait. And in small ways, a little at a time, sometimes rather abruptly, your reality changes. That is huge to me. You can change the world about you. The world is the world. It just is. I mean, the sun kind of does its thing, the earth and the moon, they all do their things. It's going to rain in the springtime and get cold in the winter. But your reality, your reaction to all of that changes. And you will build a different energy about you. And there's where the magic is. As you change your energy, you attract different things to your life. Your world changes. God, I can't. My life is so wild compared to the grumpy old guy I used to be. It's all true. He's not even exaggerating. I'm telling you. Go for it, folks. Go for it. Okay. James, tell me what's on your mind.
Our identity self is, we've been conditioned by our parents. We've been conditioned by the jobs we've had. We need money. We need all these things. We want a relationship. And all of a sudden, there comes a point in time when we've got to really sit down and really understand who we really are, right? In our hearts. And we create that future self. My question is as we're creating our future self, is that future self the unknown from the standpoint that it hasn't been known to us, right? And we just kind of start out by creating something different. But I mean, I think that kind of takes charge. So I think the God within us, our higher self, however you want to say it will actually help create your future with you. It's because you don't want your identity to interfere with that creation, correct? You understand what I'm saying?
I think that's a good question, and I'll address it to the best of my ability. It's very subtle in my answer. First of all, you've heard me say many times, you are an expression of the divine. You are a point of expression of the divine. So you express the divine. You really do. But that doesn't really, that's kind of vague. Let me be a little bit more, pardon me as I reach to a scripture that I know. It says the divine gives you the desire of your heart. Let me give you my understanding of that. I was in a church for a while, and they used that. They beat us up on it, saying that tithe and that God will give you the desire of your heart, meaning that it sounds like, he was trying to teach that he gives us what we want. That is not that scripture. That is not, and nobody teaches that except some wacky preachers. And you can find this idea in any religion. Your heart's desire, your true desire, is given to you by the divine. One of the early meditations you should do in this work, as you go into your intention and open your heart and your mind, and you say, what is it? What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? Give me something that turns my heart on. And more money's nice. There are some people who are born politicians. I mean, that is just who they are. There are some people who are born bankers, and hustling money is just who they are. Good for them. I'm glad somebody can do it because I can't. Okay? So in answer to your question, open your heart in your intent and say, what is it that turns me on? What is it that makes me happy in my heart at the prospect of doing? Just if I could do that, that would be cool to do. I know people that are engineers, and designing something is they get up and they go bug-eyed, like, oh, I get to do something new today. I got the new widget, and they start talking fast and their eyes get, and it's like, because engineering is their heart's call. And if they're not making something new and exciting, they're just mumbling, grumbling. You with me?
Yeah, that
What
makes
is
sense.
it? What is it that you wake up in the morning and will make your heart go, oh, I got another day to do this? Cool. Doesn't mean you can do it today. It might take you a couple years of preparation to get there. But when you plant that flag on the hill of your future intent, that's your life call. Go do it. I'll cheer you on all the way.
Yeah, I
There's
think
there's a guy.
that,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just think that, when you create that future self, say you come on earth for a purpose. I believe we do come in here to do something. And if that unfolds and what makes us happy, and they kind of direct us to that point, what better place can you possibly be than in line with what you're supposed to do and be supported by source? It's the ultimate win-win, and it's going to help the whole universe at that point. So, it's win-win-win, right? So
Right. I assure you, I am doing something every day for my heart's call. I wake up in the morning and go, today, will I get there today? It's like a kid the day before Christmas. Today, can I open my gift today? No, Ray, you gotta wait on,
good one.
because it's there. And I'm learning a little bit more. My awareness is growing. My skill, Dr. Joe would say, is growing. So I'm not in all wisdom. I know I'm not there yet. And if it was just put in my lap, it'd probably blow my socks off. So I'm still growing to get there. But I see my future self, and it's like, oh, that would be cool. I would just so love to when I do that. That's my heart's desire, and I received it as much as I called it. Amanda, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Ray. Actually, James's question is the perfect question for my question, or for my follow-up question, which is what I was going to ask even before he asked his question. So it's amazing. My question was that in your own journey, and you've spoken before about this, the word that came to you, and then how the desire of your heart became more clear, and as you described. So my question is whether until that became more apparent to you, did you have some interim desires just to keep you looking ahead, as it were, or focusing your intention, even if they weren't necessarily what you felt were the all-consuming desire of your heart? Did you have some lead-in desires, kind of?
Well,
Yeah.
well, first of all, thank you for being patient with me as you waited for me to realize that. Well, anyway, so thank you for your patience, and that's a good question. It's a fair question, because in the beginning of my journey, all I had was this idea of a word. It's like, oh, that would be cool if I could do that, and I wasn't even close. I was still terrorized by my past. I was still recuperating my strength and my mind from my cancer treatment. I was still, get it? Everything else. But in me was my character. Who am I? And who I am is basically a man of real tested integrity, and someone who, despite the chaos that I've lived, really wanted to help people. So you'd never know it by the chaos in my life, but I really did have a desire to be of value to other people. And so that kind of drove my studies to begin with, which, once again, I did not choose that character. At least it's a very complicated story when you go to past lives and you pre-birth character and you choose in your contract and all that. That story gets way beyond the scope of my pay grade right now. And but that was who I am. And so that's what I worked on the way to my future self. And in so doing, I learned how to heal the pain and the noise and the shame of my past life. And everything, lots and lots of little steps in this journey. And this chapter talks about the difference between who I really was, who I thought I was, and how I presented myself. Starting with this chapter, as I learned it, I started calling chapter 6 last week the chapter of the discovery of the heart, and 7 through the rest of the book. If it's so easy, why is it so hard? That's kind of how I took this when I went through this book, because learning to close that gap it's like I hadn't a clue how to do it. It's like that was just theory to me. Well, once I learned how to heal that child in me, close that gap of the pain, quiet the noise, take away the shame, quit holding on and let go. Once I learned some of those lessons and applied them and succeeded in them, then the lesson in this chapter started taking place, closing the gap of who I presented to who I really am. You know, this isn't something you can read and just go, okay, I got it. Or should I say, it sure was not for me. But when we never overcome our limitations and continue carrying the baggage from our past, it will always catch up with us. And this usually happens starting around the mid-30s. When we never overcome our limitations and continue carrying that baggage from our past, it will always catch up with us one way or another. Now, you had your hand up there just a few minutes ago, girl, and you took it back down. Amanda, is that you got the same question, or are you done? Okay. Karina, there you are. Thank you for raising your hand.
Hi, everyone. So, thank you for letting me speak. And my question is, I guess, continuing the discussion beforehand. So Dr. Joe suddenly realizes he comes to a conclusion, right, that he's not leaving the thing that he's preaching. But in let's say in my case, right, I was doing metacognition, and I think that I know who I am, and I think that I feel inside of me the way I present to the world. So there is congruency type of thing for me. But when you said, okay, the day that I changed, I realized how much it was not, I suddenly started thinking, so how do you know? Like, do you know only after the fact that you thought you were who you are, but then when change happened, you go back looking and saying, oh, I was so wrong? Or how do you identify for a person, for a person who tries to live the life truthfully, right, tell people whatever, not being such in such how can I say, extreme states that other people are, and they want to change and go to opposite, but they think that they are doing the right thing, and still life doesn't work out for them, right? How do you know what you are clinging? How do you identify what you hold on to? You know what I'm saying?
I have an idea. Thank you for the question. It's a very sensitive question, and it's a very subtle question. Let's say that you don't have the insanity that I grew up with and experienced, that you're just a normal person, got a normal survival. You grew up, left your family, started your own life, and paying the bills. You know, just forget all the news headlines. But you still have struggles. You still have, that's how the mind works. So how do you sort that through to find it? So we'll start with that as a conversation instead of talking about the nightmares that people have. Let's you start, I would say, is as you do this work and you seek the quiet of your mind, as you seek the future self, as you bring your past self into your present, your future self, and you get a solidified, singular present moment person, things will stand out as out of place. Your grievances that you're holding on to, the assaults, the emotional assaults, the shames, the insults, the just traffic jam, the car accident, the insults in high school, the class that you failed in college that you just couldn't get right because the environment was just hostile to you and you just couldn't make yourself do it. I had a class like that once. I'll tell you about it if it matters. But anyway, so how do you bring to mind that simple thing? The equation is still the same. You still bring the energy to your mind and you let it process in you, and the goal is always the same: to have empty hands pertaining to this energy so that you can release it from its guard duty, which is just out there making sure it doesn't happen again or protect you, and bring that energy in and have it cycle through you and make you stronger. It's the same equation. So as you go into that silent place, you will have memories. And you'll know the difference between just busy mind, because busy mind is stuff that's just got to be done, or show you watched yesterday, or somebody had a conversation with you that was disturbing and distracting and interfering. You know, give it a little bit of time, that stuff goes away. But if you go into that quiet place and something that happened last year comes up and gets in your face, you know, what's big for one is little for another, you know. But it doesn't matter how big it is. What matters is that it's just taken away your energy. It's here and it's in your face. Like I said, which one do you want to deal with today? You want to deal with the one that's in your face. And it's all the same. It's all part of your perimeter energy. It's just vortexes that are stirring around that says, is it my turn to get healed? And if you can solve the equation of diminishing that energy, bring it into you and let it be part of your present moment energy now, it will be part of your additive of your healing. You can only stress so much and your body won't have enough energy in it to keep you healthy. And people start breaking down. You bring all this stuff in and the body just goes, oh, I got energy to heal now. And it will heal. That's the program. That's the autonomic system program. Heal. Sound like a dog. Heal. No, I'm sorry. I kind of fell off the train there for a second. Okay, so the whole purpose of the autonomic the primary purpose of the autonomic system is to give you to its maximum ability to heal you. So you bring these in and you heal. But it's the contrast. I have an ideal self and I've got this noisy thing in my face. Okay, so I'm going to calm you down. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to draw that energy in and I'm going to apply that new energy to my ideal self. I think I wandered around on that, Karina. Did I answer it all?
I think so, but as you were talking, if I want to get into a quiet space, I feel like Dr. Joe's meditations is not the way. He's very busy. Okay,
Well,
so I need to.
well, that's another conversation, but the
Yeah, yeah.
tools, but Dr. Joe's meditations are to give you tools. Because if you follow his work, follow his meditations as you work, your mind is so busy, it has to let go of this. Put your attention, go to space, put your attention, go to space, put your attention, and you'll find yourself drift, even with all the noise, and you got to bring it back, put your attention. Pretty soon, you learn to put your attention here, and this fades. And you've learned a big lesson, and you get to have a moment of peace as you work through the meditation. Once you get where you can do that on a regular basis, he has some interesting quiet meditations, and you've heard me suggest it before, the generous present moment. That's one of my favorite when I want a quiet time to meditate and go into a state of wonder. Wonder is where I don't have an intention, I just want to receive. What you got for me today, angels, messenger? I just love you so much, and I just sit there and I thank him. I just spend 15, 20 minutes saying thank you and just letting my heart go to love. Sometimes I get one of these lessons that makes my eyes pop open and go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's cool. And I get a little inner teaching because I am simply in a state of wonder and receiving. But a lot of times I do the work, particularly on times when my head won't let me go. The more my head won't let me go, the more I want to do the work. And I have a few meditations that I do different things with. I have the quiet ones and I have work ones. I have exciting ones and I have the student ones where I go there and I'm anxious to learn to see what it will teach me. The blessings of the energy center ones, I mostly at work, and I have different ones depending on what I'm doing. One of the studious ones, the ones that I like to study in as I do it, one of my favorite in that one is the reconditioning the body to a new mind. I like that one. And I mentioned one of the quiet ones is the generous present moment. I just rest in it. You know.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lynn, I see your hand.
Just an interesting fact to me, where Dr. Joe's saying between the ages of 20 and 30 is when we start to look more consciously at ourselves. And when we look at the prefrontal cortex really developing at the age of 25, helping us to make good decisions, thinking about life. And with Eastern medicine, each age, we have age sequences of life. And that time period that Dr. Joe's referencing, that 20 to 30-year period, that's lung large intestine, which is the lungs are basically what are we taking in? What are we taking in our lives, like an inventory? And that large intestine, what am I releasing? So it makes sense to me that during that time period, we following nature, if we're following, living harmoniously, we're looking at life saying, how has life been? We're taking it in, and what stays, what goes, what am I going to release? I just found that interesting with the time frame and everything.
That is really a cool parallel. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. I am going to be sure to keep that in this recording. That was sweet, Lynn. Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing too, with the yawning and everything, yawning is a function of spleen energy. And when I mention these organs, I'm just talking about the energy of the organs. I'm not saying, like, the liver has more than 500 functions. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that specific organ, but yawning is a function of spleen. Spleen is detoxing the blood, right? Spleen is trying to bring energy in, but it's also through detoxing. So when you're looking at that complete blood count, you know, Ray, if you want to call me sometime, we could talk about that, because looking at that CBC, are the white blood counts higher, the red blood counts? I'm just throwing it out there, like everything is always speaking to us. We just need to understand the language of the body. And I love how it's tied in to all of this and all of life.
Okay, iPhone. Is this James? Is that who you were on? No, Peter. Peter was came in as an iPhone. Who is this?
Okay. Oh yeah. Hey, is that working now?
Yeah, I got you, Peter.
Okay. Hey, I'm gonna try. Okay. Well, now I'm all discombobulated. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna figure this out. So, anyways, yeah, I guess I just had a brief question for you. Do you have kind of a regimen that you would recommend for somebody who's new to this, work or lifestyle, or I mean, whatever you want to call it? I mean, so obviously there should be a certain amount of meditation, right? So I guess that's maybe my first question is kind of which meditations, how often? I mean, I know there's no exact prescription that you can give, but any general guidelines?
Okay, I'll give you my broad sweet
Yeah.
meditation. I'll start with a premise that you're new to Dr. Joe's work. And so I understand I've got some people here that have some pretty good history of meditations from a lot of different teachers and a lot of different histories. So I'm going to just skip all that history and just say you're new to Dr. Joe's work, and you're desirous to absorb his work and the effect of his work. Okay, so first of all, you've taken the first great step, and that is to start a systematic study of breaking the habit. There's a reason that book came first. Second of all, the meditations you should get are, I got poked again. The meditations I recommend are the first set of Blessing of the Energy Centers, 1, 2, and 3. These can be had on drjoe.com, his website, and his shop. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Blessing of the Energy Centers, 1, 2, 3. I think you can buy them as a set. And the reason why you want all three, because you'll get bored doing one over and over and over again. A little bit of variety helps the mind. The second thing you want to get are the 2 meditations that go with this book: Body, Shapes, and Space. Body Parts and Shape and Space. That's one. That's the one we did last week, and that's the one we're going to do again tonight. And the second one that comes with this one is also included in discussion in this book is Water Rising. And we'll do that the last few weeks of this book study. Now, why that? Okay, the little bit of history of that. As you first begin the strange journey into Dr. Joe, what is space is a question that's a huge hurdle to overcome. And so as you do the first few Blessing of the Energy Centers, that is less of an urgent question. Once you start doing the meditation that we're doing tonight, Body Parts, Space, the space question is paramount to solve, and how to go from awareness into, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right, and how to go from the analytical attention into receiving awareness is a huge hurdle in beginning Dr. Joe's work. At least it was for me and for a number of other people. And so you start with Blessing of the Energy Centers, and you work your way into Space and Water Rising. Now, how much meditation do you do? I don't know your lifestyle, so I'm going to give it a broad brush and just say what Dr. Joe recommends. You go through the REM cycle in your head twice a night. You go into that alpha wave pattern, might be a better way of saying it, because you REM all through the night. You go through alpha brain waves twice a night dominantly. One when you first go to sleep in the evening, and one when you first wake up in the morning. And thus enters the best times for you to meditate. If you work at night and sleep during the day, then then your cycle is different than mine. You know, depending on what your work cycle is, and because be real, you just do the best you can. So the ideal is when you first wake up, plan time to sit and meditate and practice going into space. And in the evening, before you go to bed, before you go to sleep, you sit and meditate and you practice going into space and you let go of today. Over time, you'll learn to let go of your past, but you begin with today. For me, just letting go of today was a big hurdle because I was very critical of myself, and my today was just one big criticism of self. So you do what you can do. And that's the basic formula of someone I would say is beginning to work.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I just one other question. I ordered an audio book on it's meditations it's meditations on this book, meditations on breaking the habit of being bad.
Good.
But I don't know that it has those meditations. I think they're different meditations.
The audiobook, if you bought the set of audiobook, you know, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself audiobook, you'll get a box that looks, at least I did, I get a box that looks something like this.
Mm.
Okay. I love it. I use it. I've been using it for 4 or 5 years. It helps me study because I read it and then sometimes I just want to go through it a little quicker. And so I get the audio playing and well, anyway, but that's not the meditations. If you go into the shop, you'll find the meditations. Go to on the left side, select meditations and scroll down till you can find the meditations that you're looking for.
Okay, and it was water rising, and what was the other one?
Body parts and space.
Body parts and space.
Or something like that. It's associated with breaking the habit of being yourself.
Okay.
It's body
Oh.
parts in space.
There it is.
Wow.
Did you hear it? Body parts
Yeah.
in space. Okay.
Yes.
That sounds like a sci-fi horror movie.
Well, the first time I tried it, it might as well have been because it's like, what are they talking about?
Okay, thanks, Ray.
Mm-hmm. Space within the space. What? It still is funny to me. When we keep that diversion up, guess what eventually happens? We grow more and more dependent on something outside of us to change us internally. When we keep looking outside to reinforce us, it becomes harder to harder. Sooner or later, everyone realizes that they need more and more of the same. I was very much into alcohol for a while and I just couldn't get enough of it. It's amazing. Well, anyway, eventually we come to see that our futile attempt to maintain an ideal for others is equally a strategy to make sure that those impending feelings we've been running from never capture us. That's what we're doing. We're running from this something inside of us, trying to build this ego up. When this happens, the individual begins to wake up. After some self-reflection, she discovers who she really is, what she has been hiding, and what no longer is working for her. So she lets go of the facade, the games, and the illusion. She is honest about who she really is. At all cost, she is not afraid to let loose of it all. This person stops expending the energy she has been putting into keeping an illusion image intact. I think you've heard me say I reached a point in my first cancer dealings where they kept telling me, get your affairs in order. You are not going to survive this. Nobody does. How'd you like to go to a doctor and every time he sees you, he asks you if you've got your affairs in order? Don't leave your wife stranded. Take care of your business. And I go, what do you mean? He says, because nobody survives this. Seriously. I did. And, you know, And I said no to the darkness. She's honest about who she really is. I knew how messed up I was, but I didn't know how to fix it. I just knew that if I didn't stand and say no, I was gone. So you got to really, really want it. If you've been around me long enough, you'll hear me ask you the question, how bad do you want it? And what do you hold sacred that you won't change? So they bring her, they're talking about this one person. So they bring her to the doctor who gives her Prozac or some other drug. In a short time, the person's former personality returns. That is modern psychology. If there's a psychologist here, pardon me, but I think you are the most dangerous profession in the hospital. I apologize if that offends you, but I've got a history that explains it.
Me too.
That new self emerges as unpredictable, even radical once you get off it. Who wants to be around that person? Who wants to be around the truth? You didn't want to be around me when I was me at that time. And so either did they. And so they drugged the crap out of me. I was delusional for 3 years when I started wanting my mind back, and I just went cold turkey and I said, you can't make me take those. You're not big enough. And there was actually discussion in putting me in the hospital because I refused. And I said, you better come with more than that because you're not big enough to make me take these. And so I went cold turkey off all the medications, and I went nuts for a while until my body got clean of them and I got my mind back and I started relearning how to live my life. That was not part of this lesson. Sorry about that. If you need the environment in order to remember who you are as somebody, what happens when you die and the environment rolls up and disappears? Now, how does that have a thought out of nowhere? Think of it. So much of who we are. I am a soldier. I am a carpenter. I am a wife. I'm a doctor. I am this. I am that. And you die and you are not any of those things anymore. What happens to your sense of self? Or do you just think you're a candle and you get blown out? Do you know what goes with it? The somebody, the identity, the image, all that goes away and you're left with this. This is all that we work about in this conversation. I'm helping you to bring back all this energy to light up this inner column. I've got such a clear suggestion in me of this inner being. I do this all the time. I talk to people and I just, well, I'm thinking about it and I do this and I know they'll look at me like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm stirring my self-consciousness, not of this ray, but of this ray. I'm stirring it up. I want to be aware that this is me that's drawing in the answers for this question. Because this is what follows. This is where I keep. What you're left with is who you really are, not how you appear. When your life is over and you cannot rely on your external world to define you, you'll be left with that feeling you never addressed. You would not have evolved. If you haven't learned to do this, then you've missed the lesson of this contract. If you had certain experiences 50 years prior that marked you as insecure or weak, and you felt that your way about hasn't changed since, then you have stopped growing emotionally 50 years ago. I remember when I started dealing with my past, and it occurred to me that I was still pretending to be that young man with those same grievances 40, 50 years ago. I was shocked that that part of me was reacting the same way. I hadn't matured in it. God, that was disturbing to me.
What page are you on, Ray?
I've just turned to page 160. Most people who do not know how to change think, how can I make this feeling go away? That's where this whole conversation began tonight, remember? And if the novelty of accumulating new things wears off and stops working, what do you do now? If I'm a successful business, but I make more money than I can buy stuff with. What do I do when all my spending doesn't touch me? Well, that's kind of what this study is about. Midlife crisis. My 30 years old seems kind of young for a midlife crisis, but maybe that's just me. People can go to games, alcohol, shopping, gambling, pornography. These are all very ego addicting. (162). If receptor sites are continually stimulated, they get desensitized and shut off. So they need a stronger signal. A bit more stimulation, turn them to the next time. It takes bigger chemicals, highs, to produce the same effect. That's one of the signs that you can have about your life. Or what you're doing, does it take more to get that satisfaction than it did a month ago? You know, I remember I started drinking an energy drink, and the first can I drank, I said, oh, this was good. Within 3 months, I'm buying this energy drink by the case and drinking a few a day. We're not talking the little shots, we're talking, and I'm drinking a few a day to get that same drive that I was looking for. I didn't understand this then. That was before Dr. Joe. Talking about red flags that I just ignored. Lower on the page. Over time, we become addicted to something in order to ease the pain or anxiety or depression we live by on a daily basis. Is this wrong? It wasn't wrong. I was just trying to get my drive because I had a very serious job and I wanted that edge to do a better job. But there had to be a better way for me. There just had to be. Most people do these things because they just don't know how to change from the inside. And there it is. I didn't know how to get up energy-wise on the inside. So I stimulated it with these energy drinks. If we wait for anything outside of us to make us happy, then we are not following the quantum law. I was not following the quantum law by loading up on energy drinks. But I'm not beating myself up about it because that's all I knew at the time. That was the best tool I had to do my very serious high pressure job. We have to become happy before abundance shows up. I put an exclamation mark about it. And it's like, say what? Now, how do you do that when you're struggling for your survival? Right? I mean, is there anybody that read that sentence that didn't challenge it? We have to become happy before our abundance shows up. And what happens if addicts can't get more? They feel even angrier. Exactly. Once you get in that trap, how do you get happy? Because if you don't do it, you get angrier. Eventually, though, nothing is ever enough. The pleasure centers have recalibrated to such a high level that when there is no chemical change from the outer world, it seems the addict now cannot find joy in the simplest things. Exactly. I live that. I read this book and went, oh my God, this is about me. Do you feel unique until you read this book and you go, well, yeah, I did that. I mean, how unique are you if you have a character that he just writes about, like as if, well, everybody does it. Right? But it is imperative to realize that behind every addiction, there's some memorized emotion that is driving the behavior. Now, this is a key to getting free. It is not the behavior that's the real challenge. Let me read it again because there's a key here that's important in helping you get free. It is imperative to realize that behind every addiction, sugar, violence, anger, jealousy, insecurity, fear, these chemical addictions in the body, behind every addiction, there is some memorized emotion that is driving the behavior. I had memorized anger and the association of things that go with that anger as my emotion. I had made it my identity. What's yours? Is it jealousy? Is it fear? Is it aggressiveness? Is it being a bully? I don't know. Is it insecurity? I'll never succeed. Is it arrogance that's really hiding insecurity? Think of the emotion when you get these things in your face. You know, you diminish them, but ask questions in the back of your head. What is the emotion that called this up in my face at this time? What did I pause on? What went through my head in that moment that made this become apparent in my mind again? Because the body does do it just every now and then out of the blue, it seems like, because it's an addicted behavior and you haven't touched it for a while, and so it gives it to you. Here it is, go away. But sometimes, just like in associative memories of a trauma, you did something out here that triggered a memory of the trauma, of this impactful emotion, this memorized emotion that you've got hidden in you and that you're not done healing.
Hey, Ray, I'm sorry, what page are you on? I don't see that.
It's on kind of the middle of page 163.
Thank you.
In 163, there's a subtitle called The Bigger Gap, Emotional Addiction. In the paragraph that follows, the last sentence says, it is imperative to realize that behind every addiction, there is some memorized emotion. Knowing this, accepting this, will help you become self-aware when you deal with some stuff that just seems to come at you and you overreact and you go, okay, this is a messy situation. Why am I going crazy? It's not that big a deal. I do it like that because that's how I used to be. That's why it's easy for me to act like that way, because yeah, that's my old self. Okay, so I can make fun of myself now because I'm pretty well free of it. But there was a memorized emotion that was making me jump like a cat. I mean, bad guys behind bushes type of thing. What is not beyond the scope of this book is, in fact, its central purpose is to help people break the habit of being themselves, whether they view that self as being an alcoholic, a sexaholic, gambler, shopaholic, or someone who is chronically lonely, depressed, angry, bitter, physically unwell. Those things, learning how to deal with that is what we do. In thinking about the gap, how we appear and who we really are, possibly you said to yourself, well, of course we hide from other people our fears and fear. Yeah, I acted tough because I was afraid most of the time. We gave those things free rein to be freely expressed. 164. But if we are to break free, it means we have to confront that true self and bring out into the light that shadow side of our personality, into the light, that shadow side. I had a very angry presentation, and it wasn't until I started digging in did I get past that angry persona, did I realize that mostly I was really a fearful person. And I was so angry at being afraid that I would get angry at what was stirring fear in me. So I would present myself as aggressive and angry to cover up my insecurity and fear. You know, so going back to that memorized emotion, it helps in understanding what you're dealing with. It's just part of the human process. You're not strange. This is, it's written in a book, you know, that sold millions, and people and everybody that reads it goes, yeah, I got a little bit of that in me, right? Instead, let's just unmemorize our self-limiting emotions. A memory without emotional charge is called wisdom. How do you unmemorize it? You devalue it so that the cortex, that whole job is to remember what is valuable to you, is taught, oh, this was a long time ago, I don't care anymore. Yeah, that was a bad day. I'm doing this now. I'm not afraid of that anymore, so I don't have to be angry anymore. I got angry because I was afraid. Just telling myself to be angry, not to be angry, diminished it some, but my problem was my inner fears and insecurities. Once I got past my facade of anger and tough guy, I realized, hey, there's a part of me that's afraid, and that's what's triggered me. So I started reasoning on my fear and go, look at me, right? I'm secure. I'm not fighting any battles, figuratively or imaginatively. I have nothing to be afraid of. Calm down, be good, relax. Once I started understanding I had memorized emotions as my real enemy, I started solving this stuff. Oh, by the way, your first layer is never the problem. Write that one down. Whatever presents to you as the problem is never the problem. That's the illusion covering up that inner thing that is most sensitive that you're protecting.
Sorry, Ray, sorry for jumping in. Just as you said that, I'm just thinking, isn't fear is at the base of um kind of all our issues?
Oh yeah, that's it. And fear, some people fear and just cower in it, and that's and they do different things. Me, I got really angry at being afraid, and so I converted the energy of fear into anger and aggressiveness. I protected my fear by being a more angry, aggressive person. So that became a shield to what I'm afraid.
Right. That's the survival. That's the way you
That's
survive.
right. That's the way I
But
survived.
you're for maybe people can share people that went through this process deeply. Maybe people can share if they got from whatever was
Yeah.
happening to them, peeling all these layers and coming down there into fear. I'm just interested.
Yeah, I think your point is very valid. Look at the animal kingdom. There's some animals fight when they're afraid. The turtle goes in a shell and disappears when he's afraid. Some animals change colors when they're afraid. Others can flee when they're afraid. Our modern society is kind of complex, and people have different ways of dealing with the pain of survival and fear. Anybody want to that's getting some victory in their fear factor? Because she's right, fear is kind of the bottom line of survival, and would like to give a comment about how they're overcoming this baseline memorized emotion. Yeah, that one's that's a fear right in itself, isn't it? Lynn, thank you for raising your hand.
Yeah, I would say breath work is huge. You know, like holotropic breath work and different types of breath work. We do, you know, specific breathing with Dr. Joe, but exploring into other types of breath work as well, because it is trapped in the body, our cellular memory. And I see it as like blowing through, you know, really blowing through and clearing it out, because it gets stagnant and stuck in our physical bodies. You know, like Dr. Joe calls those lower three chakras, the lower three energy centers, the centers of survival. And that's all, you know, like fear, guilt, shame, insecurity, doubt, anger, anxiety, all of that. And breath work for me, any cravings, any addictive thoughts, ways like, you know, those ways that can come back, those memorized ways of being, whether they're thoughts, whether they're actions, emotions, whatever it is, breath work just always gives me that clear reset and is very long lasting for me.
Good. That is a practical tool. And that pretty well is what I got when I did the blessing of the energy centers 1, 2, and 3 for the first year, again, 100 times. Yeah.
Mhm.
Steve's, I see your hand. Thank you, Lynn. Steve's, I see your hand.
Your question, say your question again, Ray.
What do you do to overcome fear? The baseline fear. I went angry and I pushed that which tried to make me afraid. I got angry at it and pushed it back. What do you do?
What do I do now, or what did I do before?
Well, not then. I mean, let's say you've got victory over this chronic feeling, emotion, this memorized emotion. What did you do to overcome it? Let's talk about something you had success in.
Okay. For me, what I've done is I've just it's been and I'm not meditating every day. I'm just kind of meditating as I feel like I need it. So what it's done though is it's made me like ridiculously aware of those little voices in my head. It's even to the point sometimes where I'm almost like, sometimes I almost regret, like I don't truly regret it, but I almost regret it because I can hear those sentences or thoughts going through my head. So for me, it's been the meditation just kind of has woken me up in my daily life when it's made me more cognizant, slowed me down mentally on a day-to-day basis. And I can just hear some of that garbage that goes through there. And I agree with you that like I have the same, I'm working through the same thing you went through, was the anger issues. And so anger, and you talk to any psychologist and they'll say anger is right next door to fear on the emotional scale. So everything you're saying to me makes sense. And so to answer your question, what I've done is just become more cognizant, more aware of it. And when I hear that, I kind of took up one of your sayings, kind of like, oh, you say, pull that back in, Ray, pull that back in. You say that. And I thought about, I did that a couple times and I was like, I don't want to pull that back in. I came up with an expression just like, okay, let that go. Let that go. And then just like you were talking about 5-10 minutes ago, like I just asked myself, is that truly important? Like this emotion, this memorized emotion that I would have driving behind someone that's just being a slowpoke driver. And they really are. It's like I'm not like in a huge rush. I mean, some days I am, but some days, a lot of times I'm not. And it's like, just like they're just driving ridiculously slow, like at 5 o'clock, on Pittsburgh Street, which is a main street through my town, and it's annoying as hell. And most people would be annoyed with it. And I just am like, well, I keep challenging. See, first off, now I'm aware of it. That's what I'm taking 8 minutes to say is the meditation has made me aware of it. And then now that I'm aware of it, I sit there and I say two things. Is that important to me? And can should I just release that? Do I need to hold on to that? Because that's just stealing my energy, stealing my focus. And 9 times out of 10, unless I'm just in a really bad mood, I'm just like, yeah, I can release that. I want to release that. I don't want to. And so I'm breaking that memorized pattern rather consciously, I guess.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. You become aware of it and release it. And it just, now that the hold of that vortex of that concept is released and the energy can just do what it naturally does. That's right. Anna, I see your hand. Thank you for being patient.
Hi, Ray.
I recognize your voice, Anna. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I can relate to this because you and I share, history, the trauma, right? The background, the beginning. But so yeah, there's been a lot of fear, and it's, hmm, a lot of that went away when I, when I went to Orlando, went to the retreat in November. And I was a Healy, and so that alone was very healing for me, and it took a lot of the fear away, but not all of it. And then I had the accident, and I brought back a lot of fear, and things that used to make me really angry don't anymore. And like you said, I agree with what you said, because with our history, there are things in the past that would trigger that anger, which is also fear, which I agree with Steve about that. Anger and fear are like two sides of the same coin. But yeah, so it's really different, very dramatically different. But also, I can't complete this whatever you would want to call this contribution, I would call it, but without but without acknowledging Joe's work. Okay, because the meditations, I think, have been the most healing also for me.
Right.
Yeah, there's just nothing else like it. It's amazing. I meditate almost every day. I do the coherence healing meditations as well. So yeah, and it's helped the healing of my recovery from my arm. But yeah, so it's those two things you ask. What we're doing. You're very familiar with my history, but what I'm doing is the net, the neuroemotional technique, and then of course Dr. Joe. In fact, I'm excited because in 2 weeks I'll be going to the follow-up retreat here in Dallas. So I'm getting ready for that. Can't wait. I've signed up to be a Healy, so pray that I get chosen to do that for my
All right.
arm.
All right.
All right. So anyway, that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Kathy?
I was just curious with Lynn with the breath work. I've never done anything like that. Is there a good place to start to learn about that?
Lynn?
Yeah, there's a ton out there. If you just go to YouTube, there's all different types of practitioners. You can go to one of the guys who's in our Dr. Joe groups, Leland Holgate. He's called the Willful Warrior. He has one. And if you just Google, I would Google HOLO for holotropic breath work, and also breath work for beginners, Wim Hof. He has a bunch out there. And I would strongly recommend, even though it says beginners, really just like Dr. Joe's, go at your own pace. If you need to take your time, if you need longer breaks in between, because a lot of the beginner practices that are out there can be pretty taxing on the body if, if we're not used to it. So just play around and see what you like.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Lynn, those are really good, but the way you said it, I'm sure no one got a chance to write it down. Could you just kind of text that out in the chat?
Oh, sure. I'm
That-
sorry. Absolutely. Sure.
No, I'm glad you said it, but now everybody's going to say, what did she say? Let me see what she wrote.
You know what I can do? How about in our WhatsApp group? Do you want me to just throw a few links in there?
That would be great. You're
Yeah.
sure welcome to
I'll-
do that.
This way it's easier than people copying and pasting.
Yeah, that would be great. That way it will be there for people after
Yep.
this meeting.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lynn. Good question. And we have one more hand up, Lynn, with the pretty daisy for a flower.
It's a sunflower.
Okay.
Hi, Ray. It's Linda, actually.
Oh, Linda. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I think of sunflowers as a plant that grows 5 to 6 foot tall and has a blossom about that big.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one. That cute little flower is a sunflower. Oh, come on.
Yeah, it is actually. It's actually a sunflower from Swarovski.
Okay.
It's a crystal from Swarovski.
Okay. So what's your statement, Linda?
So what I wanted to share is, for me, I had a lot of different things coming up all the time that I wasn't aware of, and it happened over many years that were all coming out to the surface eventually. And I wish that I had known how to deal with all of these fears earlier on, because then I would have been able to identify them. And most people, I find, they take longer to peel back all the layers to identify all these negative emotions that are coming up from past trauma over time. But I think that I discovered now that the fastest way to do it is to admit to those feelings that are coming up, and not to avoid them, to accept them, like Dr. Joe Dispenza mentions, accepting them, admitting to it, and identifying them. So identifying our fears, like writing down all the fears that we feel that come up. Like there is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Napoleon Hill. He mentions in the book Think and Grow Rich the 6 ghosts of fear. And the 6 ghosts of fear, if you can identify them, then you will be able to identify the enemy, which is what is trapped in our emotions in our body, and that are always lingering and haunting us. That's why they're called ghosts of fear, because they're haunting us and we're not aware of them, but they're there. And so we can't acknowledge them ourselves, but other people identify them in us whenever we get into an argument with someone, and we blame them, or we accuse them of being a certain way. The argument happens because there's something in you that you are in the frequency of that vibration that's causing that argument. You have that inside of you yourself, and you're not even aware of it. So we have whatever it is that we get emotionally involved with other people is something that we're carrying in ourselves. That is part of one of the fears that we carry, and it's coming out with how we perceive other people. So when we perceive someone in a certain way that makes us feel annoyed, anxious, irritated, we find them like to be really annoying, or we get angry at them, that has something to do with a fear that's inside of us that we are not even aware of. That's one of the ghosts of fears that we have. So we can identify them, whether it could be the ghost of fear of criticism, the fear of illness, fear of losing love, the fear of old age, the fear of poverty, the fear of death. And they have other underlying fears as well that have to do with fear of failure, or fear of losing control, trying to be in control all the time of our lives, trying to stay safe and supported. So all these things I find that help me is to admit to which fears we have, and we write them all down, the ones that we can identify, and then also doing affirmations for each fear. So fear, like for example, writing down affirmations that have to do with each fear that we're fearing, and then putting them on a mirror. And there is, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Louise Hay.
I know the name.
Louise Hay. So she has a lot of videos, a lot of affirmations, amazing affirmations that you can deal with certain things, like certain fears that come up. There's affirmations for each one. So you can write down the affirmations and put them in your phone or put them on your mirror. And I think that's helped me. So that's why I just wanted to share that affirmations also help. You can also record, like I record affirmations for myself, and and in the morning, sometimes after I do my meditation, I put on the while I'm in the washroom, I put on the affirmations just to hear it. So it also helps as well.
Yes. I do affirmations, but not the way some people teach it. I do it by, well, I guess it is a lot. It's just worded in the way I like it. Like, I learned that I am an eternal being. I am an eternal being. I am. And I've told you my vision of shouting it and discovering myself in the throne room of the divine. I am. It's something I know. Things for my survival that used to stir up fear, I just smile at. It says, you can hurt this body, but I am an expression of divine. And things like that, just insecurity with love. I am. And there's certain things that have gotten so deeply in me, that things that used to stir my insecurities, I now smile as simply a moment to recall who I am in this moment. And it just powers me up again. And it's like, I almost feel like saying thank you to the person that tried to threaten me, not even deliberately, but just circumstance wise. Because I just kind of, oh, I remember this one. I am loved, you know, or whatever, you know. And so it's an affirmation in a way, but it's also a declaration. Well, anyway, that's how I handled it. Kind of my male in your face type of attitude toward life. Yeah, that's kind of how I do things. Closing and even eliminating the gap between who we are and who we present to the world is likely the greatest challenge we all face in life. Whether we term this living authenticity, conquering ourselves, or having people get us or accept us for who we are, this is something that most of us desire. Changing, closing the gap must begin from within. We started tonight talking about who we really are and who we present to the world. Closing that gap is an important part of becoming present. It's an important part of bringing our past self and our future self into our present self. There's a lot of power in being present. The power to change, the power to be, the power to intend. When you get all here, your bell is tuned and the kingdom hears you. Yet far too often, most of us change only when we are faced with crisis. Dr. Joe says people change because of trauma or a love of future self. Most of us wait for the trauma. I did. Why wait for trauma or loss to occur and have your ego get knocked off balance due to a negative emotional state? Don't wait for that. Start falling in love with that future self. Start bringing that beingness of it into you. Start solving those memorized emotions that tie your past, pushing it away and bring it in. At those critical moments when we've really grown tired of being beaten down by circumstances, we'll say, this can't go on. I reached a point in my medical journey that I said, this will not stand. And I felt like I was standing in front of angels and demons and saying, you can't have me. This will not pass. I don't care what it takes or how I feel, body. I don't care how long it takes, time. No matter what's going on in my life environment, I'm going to change. I have to. That's what I say. What do you have that's too sacred that you won't change? That is what's going to test you. And how bad do you want it? Because if you just willy-nilly about it, just don't care, well, guess what? You've already been down that journey. Dr. Joe says to change, you have to want it more. You have to have more energy than the energy that put you in this situation in the first place. I had a lot of energy that put me in that situation, and so I was ready to go to war to change. I held nothing sacred. I was going to scorch earth my life and do what it took to survive. I am going to change. I have to. On the bottom of 165. We can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering. Yeah, that's me. Or we can do so in a state of joy and inspiration. That is my current me. We don't have to wait until we are so uncomfortable that we feel forced to move out of our resting state. Don't have to. I'm here. My joy is to help you do it in a little bit more pleasant circumstance than I did. As you know, one of the key skills you need to develop is self-awareness. We talked about, a couple of people mentioned their fear and how they had to become self-aware of it to overcome it and start putting new labels on it. I had to become a new label of my anger. And I was kind of like, you mean I'm angry because I'm afraid? What kind of addiction? I'm not afraid of anything. Like, hell, Ray, you're scared out of your wits, and that's why you're so angry. Because you don't like the pain of fear. And I started to learn some interesting things. Over time, you're going to use those powers for observation to help you unmemorize the negative emotions. Remember, it's critical to know what your memorized emotions are. Now you're going to learn to use this self-aware to unmemorize those emotions. Once I understood my barking dogs, what they were, I could start unmemorizing them, take the value off them, devalue them so this guy doesn't get the message to remember them, the negative emotions, to surrender them, let go of the value. I have no value for you anymore. I surrender you to time. Closing the gap between who I really am and who I present myself to be. I was really a man who was scared for his survival. And I came out like a barking dog. When we break the chains of that bond, we liberate the body. It is no longer the mind living in the same past day after day. When we liberate the body emotionally, we close the gap. When we close the gap, we release the energy that was once used to produce it. With that energy, we now have new material we can use to create a new life. He doesn't say it, but new health. I think as Steve says, he released that energy. That energy went back into the field of ourselves and is used to create a new life for ourselves. It's not a bad guy that gets blown away in the wind. No, this is your energy. You're healing. You're releasing. You're releasing from the bonds that's caught up in little whirly vortexes. You ever seen a river and the river's flowing real good, but on the sides is like water's caught in a vortex. It doesn't flow. It's just sit there going round, round, round. That's similar to what we're talking about. The river of your life is moving, and you've got all these parts of your energy that's caught on the edges of your life, and they're not going anywhere. They're caught. They've captured this moment in time. We're learning how to clear the rubble of our life so that these waters of our life can pass on. I think that was a good image. I like that. "168, I marked this. Keep in mind that it's not enough merely to notice how you've been thinking, feeling, and behaving. It's not enough. Meditation requires you to be more active than that. You also have to tell the truth about yourself. Do you think it was easy for me to face Mr. Tough Guy who was really a scared kid that was just tired of being afraid? This is no longer serving my best interest. This is no longer serving me. This has never been loving to myself." I underline that because a big thing that Dr. Joe started teaching me was how to love myself. Never crossed my mind that I was lovable. My wife loved the dickens out of me. I don't know why, but she does. Well, I know why now because I'm a pretty nice guy. But back in those days, I was just like, why does she love me? I just didn't understand. She saw something in me I didn't. Then you can make a decision to be free. Do you follow that? Part of what we're learning to do is to get free of the illusions of our ego. That is just another veil. I think it was who mentioned the veil, and we're on the layers of veils. I had a veil, Mr. Honest Guy, and I was under the illusion. I wasn't being honest with myself. I was surprised by that. Kind of embarrassed by it too. What a hypocrite. I used to say, I'm so honest. I was so honest. I was living a lie. Page 171. Ask yourself this: what energy from the past experience am I holding on to that reinforces my past identity and emotionally attaches me to my current circumstances? Could I use that same energy and transform it into elevated state from which to create a new and different outcome? Take a moment and think of yourself. What energy do you have that you're holding on to from your past? I don't mean busy mind stuff like you got dishes that you didn't wash or you got groceries to buy. I mean, that's just busy mind. Our society is complex. I mean past emotions, things that still make you grit your teeth when you think about. Could I use this same energy and transform it into an elevated state to create a new and different outcome? Meditating will help you peel away some of the layers, remove some of the mask you've worn. Both of those things have blocked the flow of that grand intelligence within you. Did you know you've got a grand intelligence within you? So right there. As a result of shedding those layers, you will become transparent. I love to meditate for people who have an open heart. It's such a joy. Some people ask me, and we just you go into meditation stuff, and you go to meditate them, their doors are closed. And the best you can do is love them. And then I've met some people, they just like, here I am, and their heart's wide open. It's a joy to give them my love and meditation. You understand that? Further down the page, 171. Most people try to create in a state of lack, unworthiness, separation, or some other limited emotion, rather than from the state of gratitude. But Ray, I'm having trouble paying my bills. My spouse is about as unhappy as a guy can be. My kids are not cooperating. I have nothing going for me. And it says, most people try to create in a state. How else can I create? I'm already in the lack. I'm trying not to be in lack. Where do I begin? That's where I was. That's where I began. That's when the field responds most favorable to you.
Hey, Ray,
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. You said you were living a lie. I don't think you were living a lie. I think you were just you were unfamiliar with that part of you. And you just got done saying that, as we shed layers, we become transparent. So you were unaware of that person because you were living that person. And once you became aware of it, then you started realizing maybe it was a lie. But when you were living it, there's no way you knew it was a lie. I just
Yeah,
want
yeah, in some kind of funny, twisted way, I'd have to say yes to that, because my intent was not to be fraudulent. It's just that I was just surviving, and that's just what I did to survive.
I know, but you were unaware, so you weren't living a lie. You were just caught up in it.
Yeah, I was. All this starts with the recognizing that the gap exists. See, I didn't recognize the guy. I was trying to be honest. That's who I was. The meditating on the negative emotions states that we have produced that gap and dominated your personality. Unless you are prepared to look closely at yourself and assess your proprieties with tender honesty, you will forever be mired in some past event, and negative emotions produce it. That is a profound statement and a sad one. It's kind of a burdensome. Every now and then Dr. Joe writes a statement that just makes you shake your head and go, oh, that's heavy. Unless you are prepared to closely look at yourself, that's a pretty definitive statement, and assess your propensities, your tendencies, those quirks, with tender honesty. Look past your illusions, your layers of self-flattery. You will forever be mired in some past event and the negative emotions it produced. See it, understand it, and release it. Create with the energy available to you by taking the mind out of the body and releasing it into the field. You got to look closely at yourself. And until you're hungry to change, until you can see it, you don't see it. As I sat alone that morning, I felt my heart beating, and I started thinking about who was beating my heart. Isn't that an odd thing? This is Dr. Joe. He was dealing with this from the beginning of the chapter, where he realized he wasn't happy except by outside stimulus. You might as well be taking some kind of self-medication of one form or another. So he was sitting there and he's thinking, and he was sensing his heart. I realized in one instant that I had distanced myself from the innate intelligence. That is your bottom line. How do I know what needs to be changed? Because as you seek that light within you, you'll have a contrast. This is what the light that I want in me, and this is the chaos that I'm dealing with. Now I know what to do. I need to get rid of it. I need to change that. Then I reminded myself of who I no longer wanted to be. I decided how I no longer wanted to live based on the same person. Next, I observed my unconscious behaviors, thoughts. I'm sitting, I've said this story so many times. I went to the cancer chair, had a bottle plugged into me every day for a month. Talking about something that turns off your head. Golly, the lights were on, but there's no processing going on, you know what I mean? Then I thought about who I did want to be as a new personality until I became it. I'm in that journey. It's been a few years, but somewhere along the way, I got this desire, and I've been funneling my life in that direction ever since, and I'm getting close. Someday you'll go, I got that. Let me tell you what I'm doing. Let me tell you why I decided to do this. I can see myself. It's right there. This someday. And well, anyway, it still may be years out. I don't know. It was part of the identity that was independent of any of that external stuff. I knew that I was onto something. I mean, I say these words about myself. I'm onto something. When I get there, do you have something like that cooking in you? Do you have a future self that you just go, oh, it would be cool if I could do that? It's not about, well, see, I don't relate to just making money. I'm about the most, it just doesn't do it. I had to pay my bills. I worked hard, made a good living. But I spent the money and went, okay, what's next? You know, that wasn't my heart's cry. I'm on the journey of my heart's cry now. Whatever has drawn you to this book, when you make up your mind to change, you have to move to a new consciousness. You must become very clear about what you're doing, how you're thinking, how you're living, how you're feeling, and how you're being, to the point that it isn't you, and you don't want to be it any longer. And that shift has to reach you at the gut level. I mean, you got to want it. How bad do you want it? What in your life will you not give up to get there? Because that's just the thing that will defeat you. That's how it works. That's probably why you're in the situation you're in the first place. Maybe, I don't know. I just made that one. Yeah. If it's so easy, why is it so hard? That is lesson 1 in why it's so hard. Because it's really heart digging, mining, letting go of things that we've held precious to us for years. I can tell you, because I want you to know that I live this stuff, that as a Mr. Tough Guy, coming to dealing with the idea that what drove my anger and toughness was fear, self-fear, just whacked me out. And yet every time I looked at it, the clarity of what I saw, cause and effect, was overwhelming. And so slowly I gave up one piece of cause of my fear after another. One piece of shame after another. And slowly I am the victor in this. I have the wisdom in it. I have stuff in my head that I don't know how to express because of what I learned in that journey. An experience without emotion can be turned into wisdom. I used to wonder, what in the world is he talking about? Now I smile at it because I understand the power to heal and the power in my life in converting that pain into life. Wow. Sure do love you guys. Thank you for walking with me on this journey through chapter 7, The Gap. Any last comments? Lynn, I see your hand.
And unmute. There we are. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Ray, and to everybody. It's such rich material and such rich conversation. And, the more I go down this road, the more I realize, I love decoding the Bible and seeing it as representation for life. And over and over and over again, when I study and implement breaking the habit of being yourself, it's like, to me, it's Jesus on the cross. It's ascending in this lifetime in who we are. It's like confession in the Catholic Church, but we're confessing to ourselves, and we're not punishing ourselves and giving ourselves, we're giving ourselves the reward is what it is. And it's within our own selves becoming free. And it's just so beautiful and such a gift to be sharing with so many like-hearted and like-minded people. So I'm so grateful. Thank you all.
Thank you for your love. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, I see your hand up.
Yes, James. Hey, Ray.
James.
I think we've come.
I don't know where Sam got stuck in my head, but there it is.
All right.
Okay, James.
But it took Joe, with all his great mind. He's been doing this for a long time, and he took 6 months to do this, right? So obviously we got to be patient with ourselves, and
Yes.
to be free, we have to move to that new consciousness. We have to trust in the unknown. And if we don't want to be ourselves, it's like, I think it was Katerina or somebody said that you experience that death. It's almost like taking that old self and dying and moving into your new self. So we've come full circle in this conversation. I think this gap is the biggest chapter in this book too. So thank you so much, Ray, for doing this.
I hope I was able to communicate this chapter, because this chapter is kind of a sensitive chapter. Thank you. Thank you, James. All right, I'm turning off. Thank you, everybody, for being with me on this discussion group. I'm ending the recording.